Good morning, everyone. It's time to go on the record. And this morning, tackling the state's biggest issues with Governor Baker. Plus,
Governor Baker and Mayor Walsh on opposite sides on charter schools. We sample reaction.
also this morning, the Biden impact, what his decision means for the Democratic candidates.
From WCPB Boston, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Booth. Thank you for joining us on OTR this morning. Our guest is a familiar face. This Sunday morning, we welcome in the governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker. There are major issues facing the Commonwealth right now. The devastating toll the opioid crisis is taking on families around the state and the nation. The commuter rail delays from slippery tracks, falling leaves, and then soon to come snow. Can Keolis handle the upcoming winter? And the questions surrounding the billion-dollar, and this is Sunday, of course, so we're talking football. The questions surrounding the billion-dollar fantasy sports industry. Many things to get to this morning. Governor, great to see you as always.
And the OTR pop quiz,
which I have in my hand, and this is a unique pop quiz this week, by the way. Special one just for you.
You're going to love this pop quiz.
Yeah, I'm sure I am.
Special one.
All right, let's start with Sunday football. The consensus on Beacon Hill now appears to be that fantasy football, or I should say fantasy sports games, should be regulated. The question is, should they also be taxed?
Well, if you
beyond what they are now.
I mean, let's remember, and I think it's important for the public to remember that if you win playing one of these games and you live in Massachusetts, you're taxed on what you win. DraftKings, which is located here in the Commonwealth, is a corporation here in Massachusetts. It's taxed on its earnings. The notion that somehow these are sort of untaxed, unregulated, I mean, they pay workers' comp. They're businesses. They have to comply with all the rules everybody else does. I am interested in hearing what the Attorney General has to say based on her conversations with DraftKings about consumer protections, because for me, this is a new business, a new industry. It kind of came out of nowhere. It involves many, many different kinds of games and sports, and it's a relatively unusual concept. And you know, bravo to the kids who decided to take this thing and turn it into something big. That's very entrepreneurial. But I am concerned about the consumer protection piece, and that's the part I'm primarily interested in.
Let's just focus on the money for one more second here. They say they are not yet turning a profit. So you know how casinos have to pay 25% of the take or whatever they're making. Do you think there should be a different type of tax than just a regular corporate tax on these games?
I think the regular corporate tax is certainly where the conversation should start. Somebody would need to convince me that in some way these things are so profoundly different they should be treated differently. But as I look at it right now, you tax the winnings, you tax the company, and you make sure the consumer protections are in place to ensure that people who play are getting a fair shake.
And as you look at it, is it a game of skill or is it a game of chance? What do you think?
Well, if you talk to my kids, my boys, they tell you it's a game of skill because they don't play at that level,
right,
but they play in the rotisserie and fantasy leagues that a lot of people do. The Attorney General's view at this point has been that it's a game of skill, and I'm going to take my lead from her on that.
I want to switch topics to it's fall now. Obviously, the winter's going to follow it. And just the other day, getting chilly outside, 10 lines on the commuter rail system were delayed because leaves were on the tracks. Leaves fall on the tracks here in New England every September, October. That happens all the time. There are also signal problems and mechanical failures. If Keolis can't handle the leaves, how are they going to handle the snow again?
Well, I guess what I would say is we're very tough on Keolis, and that's fine. We should be, just as we should be tough on the bus service and the rapid transit system, because millions of people rely and depend on it every day. Keolis had the best on-time performance in the month of September they've had since they took over the contract. They were over 90% within 5 minutes of their scheduled time of arrival across their commuting, which is the one I pay the most attention to, which are the commuter runs. They and we have spent a tremendous amount of time and money preparing for this winter. I believe we are far better prepared for this winter than we were for last winter. Now, Mother Nature has an incredible way of moving the deck in different directions, and we'll see what happens there. But I think we're in pretty good shape.
Given the calendar, do you think the T needs to hike fares by the end of 2016?
One of the things we said we were going to do that was fundamentally most important of all to us was to have that Fiscal and Management Control Board be very transparent about everything. Transparent about the operating budget, the capital budget, the gap, all of it. And they are meeting every week. They are doing, I think, a terrific job straight out of the gate here. And I want to have the conversation about all of it. I want to have a conversation about own source revenue, whether it's advertising or other sources of revenue, real estate. I also want to have a conversation about service delivery and costs and what we can do there as well. But my view is that the best part and most important part about this is for years and years, nobody really understood what was going on with the T's budget. And this is the first time we've ever, all as a community, had an opportunity to get a good, solid look at it.
But you and your people, most specifically Stephanie Pollack, have had it almost a year now to look at those numbers, to look at the system. Are you leaning
Almost
towards...
a year?
Almost a year. Pretty darn close.
God, time flies, doesn't it?
So my question to you...
I kind of think we really, just for the record, I kind of think we didn't really get a chance to look at this until we actually replaced the DOT board, got our legislation passed, got a fiscal and management control board in place,
But you had
all of
people
which happened by
scrutinizing
July.
the numbers.
Okay?
Yeah, but you had people scrutinizing the numbers when they got into office there.
Well,
and
but
my question
I would
is,
argue they weren't my people, okay?
well,
And they did a heck of a job. They did a heck. I would argue that the public and the administration has a much clearer look at the T's financials as a result of the creation of the Fiscal Management and Control Board. And that hasn't been around forever, and I'm not trying to say we haven't enough time or any of that, but I do think the revenue piece, the expense piece, the size of the gap and what to do about it is very much a work in progress.
So are you at least leaning in the direction of needing more revenues?
I'm certainly a big believer that the T ought to be able to generate more revenue from a whole bunch of pieces of its existing portfolio.
No fare increases, without fare increases, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that I'm not going to rule them in or out at this point. I certainly think they should be part of the conversation. I mean, it may be that the right thing for the T to do is to lower some fares and raise others, depending upon the traffic patterns and who's riding them and all the rest. But for me, the big issue at this point is open, transparent, costs, expenses, revenue. Let's see what it all looks like and then go from there.
Let's talk about the opioid crisis, because part of your opioid plan is being questioned by the House Speaker and the Senate President. One controversial section limits prescriptions to 72-hour supplies for new patients.
First prescription.
First prescription.
Which is different than, in some cases, a new patient. Okay.
Doctors are worried that this could interfere with their professional judgment. Is there any wiggle room on your part on that one?
My goal here is to make the point that Massachusetts last year wrote 240 million pills worth of Schedule 2 and Schedule 3 prescriptions. 240 million pills in Massachusetts, okay? 80% of all the world's opiates are consumed by the 5% of people who live in the United States. 4 out of every 5 heroin users started on prescription pain meds. And I've heard too many stories from people about, you know, having their wisdom teeth removed, and instead of getting 2 or 3 days worth of pain meds, they get 30 or 60 days. I am perfectly happy to have a conversation about this. And we've already started having it. We've been talking to people in the healthcare community since before and after we filed our legislation. But we are all kidding ourselves as a state and as a community if we believe that something where the negative momentum on this, and what I mean by that, Ed, is the number of people who are affected by this is going up exponentially every single year. We're kidding ourselves if we think we can, you know, play this little game on the margin and expect that it's going to matter. I don't want to be governor 3 years from now and 2,500 people, which is the run rate we're currently on, die as a result of opioid overdoses. I mean, we've got to be urgent and aggressive about dealing with this. And I'm happy to have a conversation with I'm a healthcare guy, okay? Yeah. I'm happy to have a conversation with them about what we need to do here. But I want to have the conversation now, and I want to talk about real things that will do something about the current trends, because the current trends are terrifying.
You ready for the OTR pop quiz?
Yep.
Now, I told you it's different. So you're ready for a different OTR pop quiz? Question 1 is, your Republican colleague, Senator Bill Hedlund, is sponsoring a bill...
Bob Hedlund.
Bob Hedlund. Right, typo. Reed, hello. Is sponsoring a bill with Democratic Representative David Linsky to designate an official state rock song. Governor, listen.
I know what it is, actually.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Hold on. I love the bobbing of the head. That's very good. It is
Roadrunner.
By... That's
I want to say James Montgomery.
There's the curveball. Richmond and the Modern
Jonathan
Lovers.
Richmond and the Modern Lovers.
All right.
Jeez, I met Jonathan.
Question 2.
Let's not tell him.
You have to listen again. The legislature previously considered a different ballad as the state's official rock song.
Dream On by Aerosmith.
Can you wait? No. See, look at.
I feel bad about the Jonathan Richmond thing.
It's just such rich in rock heritage. We had to listen to the intro.
All right, you answered it before you even played
I
it.
can't believe I got the John.
More with the governor.
Wrong.
We'll solve the issue in the commercial. We'll be right back with the governor.